This episode is brought to you by WeatherGuard Lightning Tech. At WeatherGuard, we support design engineers and make lightning protection easy. You're listening to the Struck Podcast. I'm Dan Blewett.
I'm Alan Hall.
And here on Struck, we talk about everything aviation, aerospace engineering, and lightning protection. Welcome back to the Struck Aerospace Engineering Podcast. I'm your co-host, Dan Blewett. On today's episode, we're going to talk about Gulfstream setting a new transatlantic speed record at 0.88 Mach from Savannah to Qatar. We'll talk about FAA and Virgin Galactic, some of their woes, Ryanair, also with Boeing in talks to get some 737 MAX 10s out the door, but it looks like those talks might have collapsed. In our eVTOL segment today, we got a bunch about Archer. The FAA has approved a G1 certification for them, and the ISS, on the other hand, is advising against the Archer SPAC merger. So we'll talk about that, some big stock news there. And lastly, interesting article from the Vertical Flight Society explaining that they've taken a directory of what now includes 500 eVTOL concepts, which is up from 200 from last summer. So we'll talk about some of that and what we can expect if maybe all 500 designs will come to fruition. I'm sure Alan has a lot of thoughts on that. So first, let's talk about Gulfstream. So Alan, this is a G700 that reached 675 miles per hour, or Mach 0.88 on the flight across the Atlantic from Savannah, Georgia, here in the U.S. to Qatar. And then they also hopped over to Paris, reaching Mach 0.90, which is 690.5 miles per hour. So this is pretty fast, but I mean, how fast is this?
It's pretty good for a business jet. Yeah, for especially as large as it is. I think the Cessna Citation 10, which was the fastest at the time, was like 0.9192 maybe on Mach. Yeah, so it's really moving. Aerodynamically, the Gulfstream's aircraft have gotten better and better as it gotten bigger and bigger. Obviously, it takes bigger engines. Yeah. I mean, if you're going to have a top-end business aircraft, Gulfstream is definitely leading the pack at the moment. It's a beautiful airplane.
So obviously, supersonic flight is a big one. Is that just breaking Mach 1, or are we really looking at like Mach 1.5? Like companies like the now defunct Aerion and now Boom, who are looking in the supersonic jet realm. I mean, is this not close enough, or I mean, what's the big difference here?
Well, it just takes a lot more fuel to go faster, and a different kind of aircraft to break this sonic sound barrier. Gulfstream has pushed the envelope pretty well in terms of subsonic flight. The aircraft is very clean, and as they develop and continue to develop, they have better computational models, better aerodynamic CFD models for the aircraft, so the aircraft keeps getting cleaner and cleaner. If you look at a G3 to the G700, it's almost a different aircraft in terms of its aerodynamics and its performance. I always think it's really interesting when they do these sort of like speed trials or world records on speed, because they used to happen in the United States quite a bit. The airplanes would go from like New York to Los Angeles or New York to Miami, places where the business flyer would frequent, right, and where the marketplace was. And so you try to set a flight record there. So now the flight records are not in the United States. The flight records are over in Europe and the Middle East, where their future customers are. So you tended to do those speed records where your customer base was, so you can always get an indication of where the aircraft's going to be sold, because that's where they're doing the speed record trials. Got
it. So, I mean, do you see Gulfstreams breaking the sound barrier, or would they have to do like a whole overhaul to get there?
Well, Gulfstream, I think, has dabbled in supersonic over the last 10 years. There's just been a lot of rumors of that. They've looked at it, but they've never pulled the trigger on it. And I think as it's a real combination of technology versus the expense and the process of getting something certified. And Gulfstream's not going to waste money. They've never been a company to spend money frivolously. They're focused on producing a really great product and keeping their customers engaged. And unless there's a great big demand for a supersonic aircraft, Gulfstream's not even going to pursue it. And I kind of wonder if they have already tapped the potential marketplace for that and realized the number of aircraft they could theoretically sell versus the amount of money they would generate. It's just a wash right now, or it's a negative. And so they haven't pursued it.
All right, moving on. So the FAA said the rocket ship carrying Richard Branson and his Virgin Galactic space crew, essentially, or their employees, left their air traffic control clearance area as they descended back on their flight on July 11th. And so now the FAA is saying, why did this happen? And they're looking for answers and banning Virgin Galactic flights until then. So, Alan, what's your take on this situation?
Well, isn't it a very weird article? And I hadn't seen this article in the United States. I think we picked this article up overseas, which makes you wonder what is the real behind-the-scenes story. But what they're indicating is that as the Virgin Galactic craft came back down to Earth on its glide path back down to Earth, that they went outside of some enveloped area that the FAA has designated for them to fly in. But I remember watching that flight, and I didn't see anything abnormal about the way that the aircraft came back down to Earth. And maybe there was some winds there that forced the aircraft to deviate a little bit based on which way the winds were blowing. But maybe it sounds like they come out of some FAA pre-designed box for a minute or two. But Dan, they're out in the middle of the desert. There's no one else around out there. Does it really make all that much difference?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I know the FAA is obviously really strict and they want to make sure there's control. I mean, is this really just an incident where they're just concerned about just the lack, like more about the plane itself? Like, why would this possibly have deviated? Or, I don't know. I mean, why would they be making a probe into this if there wasn't something potentially bigger? Yeah, I don't know.
And if you're the pilot in command, you get to make those decisions, right? So if the safety of the aircraft comes first, the FAA boundaries come second. And so it's a little weird that they're not going to let them fly anymore until they get the envelope increased, the box increased, whatever. But it is odd because you would think that the FAA would say, hey, Virgin, what's going on? And Virgin would say, hey, the wind was blowing at 50 knots at 30,000 feet or whatever it was. And it blew us off course a little bit. We corrected. We're back in. Not a big deal. Can we work out, negotiate a bigger box? Because this is supposed to be a spaceport. This is why they're in New Mexico, because it's a spaceport and there's no one around. And why the FAA hasn't agreed to that is odd. So there may be more behind the story. Maybe this is just one piece of a bigger problem that they had with that flight. It's going to be hard to tell, and rarely going to see these things discussed in public until they're settled. So I have to keep our eye on this one.
Yeah, I mean, Virgin Galactic said you said it was a high altitude wind, and that the pilots did what they were supposed to do. So yeah, it seems like they seem like they're taking it seriously. But it's kind of like, well, what else should we do there? Like, yeah, I mean, unexpected things happen in flights. But yeah, obviously maybe this is just a different magnitude since it's space and all of that. But yeah, you're right. It's something that we'll probably know more as that story progresses. But Boeing in the news cycle here was in talks with Ryanair, who's obviously one of the bigger low-cost airlines based in Ireland. And Ryanair said that they're just too far away from this potential 737 MAX 10 order. And of course, Ryanair has a known reputation for swooping in and looking for discounts on planes. Obviously, last year was a great time to get some of those, and they put in a big 737 MAX order. But when they were looking for some of the newer MAX 10s, looks like they're just too far away. So why is this newsworthy, I guess? I mean, this seems just like an ordinary, like, oh, yeah, I was going to buy a couch, and they didn't have the one I want, or it was too expensive, and so I didn't. Like, why is this really that newsworthy?
Well, just because it affects Boeing and Ryanair's stock, that's why. I mean, Ryanair has been such a large purchaser of 737s, and that's the model that's selling right now, and Boeing needs to sell a lot of those aircraft. It's going to affect the stock price, and Ryanair is knowledgeable of that fact. They know if they walk away from the table that Boeing's stock price could be hurt and it may drive them back to the table. That's probably one of the reasons why they walked away. Because in those big players like a Southwest Airlines or a Ryanair, Boeing responds to them when they have a problem. They will respond to those airline customers because of the quantities and what financially it does to the company. And I guess when I saw this article was, yeah, okay, this is just one interim piece to a longer set of discussions, and Ryanair is using the leverage as much as they can. But you got to wonder if Boeing kind of gets tired of that, because Boeing can't respond, right? So Boeing just loses some stock price because of it and has to swallow that. That doesn't go over well. So what do you do if you're Boeing? I don't know if you can do anything besides just wait it out or raise the price when they come back.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's not like Boeing would release a press release saying, yeah, we were going to sell planes this people, and then they just pulled out or they couldn't afford them. Like, it's not like they would ever do that. You're right. It is kind of a one-sided, where you wonder if there's just some sort of manipulation where they're trying to get, like you said, put pressure on them because the stock price, that's possible. I have no idea, but you're right. Boeing stock is down 1.2%. Obviously not a big hit, but something. So, yeah, anytime I guess people are learning of us fall through, sales falling through, it's not obviously a good thing for a stock price, but.
Right, but the marketplace kind of realizes that the way you don't see huge fluctuations. But if Ryanair says we are not buying 737s, we are going to buy Airbus or something else, yeah, it would have a negative impact on Boeing stock. Mm-hmm.
Well, like you said, with a lot of fleets, like Southwest, for example, I mean, they're all 737s, so they're pretty locked in, as far as like their service and their training of their technicians and part interchangeability, stuff like that. And Ryanair already has a lot of 737s, so you think that, hey, we're not there on price right now, probably doesn't have long-term implications, especially considering all their previous purchases of 737 Maxes last year. So it's not like they're going to like overhaul the fleet and go to Airbus. Like, that's certainly not going to happen. But at least right now, the 10s aren't a good fit.
Well, if you think about it from Ryanair's position, you're still not up to max number of travelers you had sort of 2019-ish. You're still not there yet. And so you're trying to cook a deal right now because you probably can leverage Boeing. But in Boeing's case, they're just saying they're going to need them at some point. So why don't we just wait it? If we just wait a year, the price isn't going to change and we're going to get our money. That's more likely what's going to happen. If Ryanair can't secure that deal now, they're going to secure it in a year from now.
All right, so in our EV2L segment today, a bunch of Archer news. So let's start with their G1 certification. So this is a G1 issue paper. Alan, what is an issue paper and why does Archer need it?
The issue paper comes into play when you have your unique configuration of an aircraft because the regulations weren't specifically designed for that particular style of aircraft. And a lot of the electric aircraft, obviously, they don't have a fuel system. They have batteries, which is not necessarily envisioned. And the way the motors move and the flight dynamics of the aircraft are different than others, like a Cessna 172. It's wholly different. So what the FAA is doing is they're taking the existing regulations, some from Part 23, which is a small aircraft, and some from Part 27 from the small helicopter, and they're creating a master list of, here are the regulations you need to show compliance with, and that kind of gets shoved one way, which goes from the FAA to the applicant, and the applicant gets a chance to respond to them and say, yeah, no, maybe we think this regulation may be a better fit, whatever. But the first thing you want to do in terms of getting to type certification is to get the certification basis defined, which is getting the G1 issue paper. There's been a couple, I've seen G1 issue papers in electric aircraft, a couple of them floating around. So it isn't like Archer has done something out of whole cloth here. This is something that was already sort of pre-cooked into the FAA system. The next issue paper that will come out is the G2, if they go down this road, which is the means of compliance, so they can define how they're going to show compliance in aerodynamics and a bunch of other stuff, noise, whatever else. So it's a step. The biggest, obviously, with Archer, the biggest issue is they're not flying anything. At least they're not telling anybody they're flying anything. Their aircraft is still a model. and having an issue paper is great. Having a flying aircraft is a lot better. So they got a ways to go.
Well, and speaking of Archer, interesting story out of TechCrunch. So ISS, which is the Institutional Shareholder Services Incorporated, is basically an advisory sort of a group, recommended last week that Atlas Crest Investment Corp., which is the SPAC that would merge with Archer Aviation, they have advised people should vote against this merger with Archer. So now ISS has done this with the Joby Aviation and Reinvent Technology Partners SPAC, which went public. So essentially people said, we don't care that you've issued this warning. We're going to go ahead and seal the votes to approve the deal. So ISS sort of has a history of doing this, of giving their thumbs down to these SPAC mergers in the eVTOL sector. But with this latest one, giving the thumbs down to the Archer merger, they're pointing out that this battle with Wisk really puts the company at risk. Alan, do you agree with that? Where do you fall on this? This kind of like, I don't know, there's a sticky warning out here from this advisor.
I think that it is going to be a difficult path for Archer to go down. Not only do they have the engineering challenges that they don't even know about yet as they get the aircraft into some sort of flight test. It's not even the full aircraft yet. Get something in a flight test, then they're got this legal battle thing going on, which doesn't raise investor confidence, and their valuation has been fluctuating so much. You see almost $3 billion down to below $2 billion. Like, the fluctuations are ridiculous in terms of the amount of money. Even in terms of the percentages, it's just widely fluctuating. It adds a lot of stress onto a company that it doesn't really need when it's trying to develop some engineering article, which is what an aircraft is. It's all engineering, right? And you just don't have time to devote resources away from that because you're spending so much money on making a factory, getting tooling, getting drawings, getting the FAA happy, getting to some flight tests. Hopefully you don't crash the thing, and all those other pieces that you're just juggling so many balls, and Archer is adding more balls to juggle simultaneously. Not sure that's a great idea. And I think the Wisk thing still is hanging out there. Wisk has released a video last week which shows them flying one of their early prototypes in 2017. So Wisk has been at this for a while, doing the flight test, and it was a piloted flight test. It wasn't remote control. It was a pilot in the aircraft, which would in 2017 would have been pretty interesting to do. So Wisk is bringing the goods, so to speak, saying, hey, we've been at this a long time. Archer doesn't even have an airplane. What's the deal? And do you have to convince a judge or a jury of that? That one's going to get interesting, because you can convince a jury about anything if you bring the goods, whether they took it legally or designed an aircraft in their own backyard, in Archer's own backyard. Who knows? Nobody knows yet, but it does lead to a lot of downside risk.
So, I mean, if you had to make a prediction, and obviously, just a prediction, do you think the merger goes through with Joby, or is Joby going to kind of remain the only one?
No, I think the merger goes through. I think these SPACs have to happen. The alternative is to collapse the company. So they need that financing. There's no way you can proceed without it, realistically. Now, the question, Dan, I don't understand the details of what drives all these companies to SPACs, because maybe just the simplicity of it. But if you're a Joby or an Archer, and you have an existing company and you need to fund and need to raise money, what you would normally do is you just become a public company. You just go public and announce you're going public, and you go through the SEC paperwork and filings and all the things you got to go do. Which would make transparency one of the keys, right? That's why they have that process. It's very transparent. Does the SPAC somehow hide the transparency part of this? Because it's starting to feel like the investors are saying, we can't tell what's going on inside when you go from, because the SPAC envelopes the company. I can't penetrate the SPAC to look around inside, so I don't really know what the value is. Is that what happens?
I'm not sure exactly. There's just a lot less steps involved. I mean, that's why the whole SPAC thing was a craze this past year. It just makes it's a much faster. I'm not sure if it's less transparent or not. That's a good question. I'm not an expert on it, but obviously when there's such a shortened path from private company to public company, you assume there's going to be less of a deep dive into finances. But again, don't quote me on it.
Yeah, it just seems like the SPAC creates the marketplace and becomes public, right? And so the SEC is evaluating the SPAC, and whatever they purchase is something separate, right? So it does seem like a way to shorten the process, and you're right. I think shortening the process maybe eliminates a lot of visibility that we'd otherwise get to see.
Well, and last up on the docket today, the Vertical Flight Society released a press release recently, a little bit last month, that basically explaining that there's been 500 different eVTOL designs that their company has sort of cataloged into a directory, including 200 new ones since last July, and just 100 so far this year between January now in September. So 500 designs, and that includes up to 288 different companies or developers. Alan, is this normal for this, or is this just a crazy free-for-all of everyone? I mean, we've reported on a lot of these, and there's been some silly ones for sure. There's been some that seem like, this is never going to happen. This is you just made a website and a prototype and a drawing. Does this surprise you? That 500's a lot.
It does, because the aircraft industry never has had that quantity of participants, particularly participants that may not have a lot of aircraft experience in their company, proposing airplanes. And you've always seen what I would term the popular mechanics kind of aircraft. Oh, there's a new aircraft company. They got this unique design feature. Yeah. It's cool, but most likely they're probably not going to make very many of them, if they make any at all. In this particular case, you just see a flooding of the market, which gets back to our discussion about the SPACs. Is it just a free-for-all right now that if a SPAC can grab hold of a theoretical design, does that then allow them to create an airplane company? Do you just have enough credentials? If Burt Rutan were out there, and he's not, but if Burt Rutan, the great aircraft designer, were out there pitching at eVTOL, I guarantee you he could have a deal. And those days are sort of long gone. So what you're seeing, and sort of the Burt Rutan area is sort of long gone. So what you're seeing is just a lot of different design groups, and maybe small aircraft manufacturer dabbled in some home-built aircraft, talking about building literally $1 billion company. So the question in my mind is, and this relates to the Archer again, because the Archer had a YouTube open house video, pre-canned video they released last week, of which there were only 400 people watching, and I was one of the 400 watching what was going on there, and I was a little shocked because, if you're having so many people enter the marketplace, that would make you think or feel like there's a lot of demand for this product. It'd be like saying, we have this iPod, or 1,000 songs in your pocket, right? Which is the Apple thing. And so which would automatically create a real sense of demand. There's a lot of demand for something like that. When an aircraft company supposedly has huge demand, and when they make an announcement, no one's paying attention, it makes you wonder, what is the real marketplace here? Is it as big? Because I think Archer was talking about doing 30 to 40 flights a day. That's a lot of demand. So these two things don't seem to jive right now in terms of the number of aircraft companies, the variety of aircraft, and the money available to them, and what the existing marketplace, the total addressable market, a TAM, looks like. What is the TAM? Because you hear numbers thrown about, and you go, yeah, how many taxi rides are given in a day? I don't know. How many people would be willing to do it? I haven't seen it. Maybe you have seen it, but I haven't seen anybody throw real hard numbers at it, but just saying we can do 30 flights a day. There's a difference between doing 30 flights and selling 30 flights. That's the difference. So we're going to have a lot to see over the next year, I think.
Yeah, there's a lot to prove out. You're right. There's going to be quite a narrowing of the field, as there already has, but you're right. There's still a lot of unanswered questions. Well, that's going to do it for this week's episode of the Struck Aerospace Engineering Podcast. Thanks so much for listening, wherever you are on Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube. Thanks again for being here, and be sure to subscribe, share the show with a friend, and we'll see you here next week on Struck. Strike Tape, WeatherGuard Lightning Tech's proprietary lightning protection for radomes, provides unmatched durability for years to come. If you need help with your radome lightning protection, reach out to us at weatherguardaero.com. That's weatherguardaero.com.